What is going on? This is Shango Ray, aka Real Deal Ray, occultist, metaphysician, spiritual technician. And today we're doing a reaction video. Okay. And yes, the topic is how to make a ghost. Is it possible? Well, you're about to see for yourself. This experiment is called the Philip experiment. And it was done under very strict scientific regulations. You know what I mean? You're going to see for yourself. We're going to dip into this. This particular video, though, is brought to you by our very own sponsor, Shango-Ray.com, of course. And we are the founders of the Custom Spirit Servants. That's right. You can get your very own custom spirit servants for whatever area of your life you'd like assistance. Who doesn't want help from the other side? Okay. But for your entertainment purposes, we're going to be watching this documentary together. And let's get into it. This is the Philip experiment. See if I do this right. Oh, wait. Wadang. And now Shango has shrunk. That is not what she said. All right, let's get into it.
An unusual experiment is about to be filmed in the studios of City TV in Toronto. The stars of this show are 8 people sitting around a table.
8 old-ass white people.
Off to the side on a raised bench are 3 men observing
if they could do
the
it,
experiment.
you know we got
Reverend
that heat.
Lindsay King, psychologist Joelle Whitten, and Dr. George Owen, scientific director for the Toronto Society of Psychical Research. The studio director gives the signal that the experiment may begin. The participants lay their hands flat on the table and begin calling out a name.
Are you there, Philip? I want to see you, Philip.
Soon the table begins to rise, as if it had a life of its own, to the surprise of the participants. Shortly afterwards, it seems that Philip no longer wishes to remain in the middle of the room. As he heads toward Reverend King, the table moves with him.
Lucifer!
The 8 mediums have a hard time keeping their hands in place. Once the table stops, one of the participants suggests to the clergyman that he say hello to Philip.
Hello, Philip.
The table rises in response. The only problem is that Philip doesn't exist and never did. Philip is an imaginary ghost. In the fall of 1972...
Now, hold on. So what I wanted to definitely say to look out for, there are some certain fundamentals that you will find in any kind of spirit creation, right? And this video is going to drop certain fundamental key points that you need to have when creating your very own ghost. I'm going to stop the film, of course, and point them out for you so you can be sure to catch them because they are of prime importance. Of course, I mean, just as an example, our formula and methodology is a little bit different, as it should be, right? But there are, like I said, usually with all of these, there's fundamentals. So I'm going to be pointing these out as we go along. Okay, so let's get back into it. Some good old Philip action.
Dr. George Owen, director of the Toronto Society of Psychical Research, came up with a unique experiment.
George Owen was a mathematician and geneticist. He studied at Cambridge University in England. He also had an interest in poltergeists.
With the assistance of 3 men and 5 women who had no particular gift for communicating with the spirit world, Dr. Owen conducted one of the most significant experiments in the field of parapsychology in the 20th century. They created Philip, the imaginary ghost.
Philip the Imaginary Ghost was an attempt by the Toronto Society for Psychical Research to prove that paranormal events could be created without the help of spirits from another plane.
Instead
of assuming that all physical manifestations were caused by the spirits of the deceased, as spiritualists claimed, Dr. Owen sought a more natural explanation.
Just had to say this. Some of you don't have actual ghosts or spirits. You are actually causing your own, what do they call that? Poltergeist phenomenon. I've seen it happen personally. And then, of course, there are instances where spirits or entities in your living environment can feed off of intense emotion, especially like negative emotion. So if like you're living with somebody and fighting a lot, I know that's off the point, but let's get back into it. Some Philip action.
plutôt opté pour l'interprétation dite naturelle.
He wanted to show that living beings, through some mechanism that has yet to be explained, could project their energy onto material objects.
Sur la matière ambiante. Dr. Owen asked the group of 8, as they were called, to imagine the fictitious character with a name, age, gender, and nationality. They came up with Philip, a 30-year-old aristocratic Englishman living in the 17th century.
Okay, just had to pause it on there. First step, of course, is making the spirit as real as possible. So as you see, they're going to go through every detail of this entity, when this entity was alive and so forth, even its history or what is it? Mythology, if you will. Okay, its story, its backstory. Give it a backstory. Make it more real. All right. Philip action.
At Diddington Manor in Warwickshire, England.
That's rule number 1.
They invented Philip's life story. He had a wife, Dorothea, who was cold and frigid.
She wasn't giving up the box.
Margot, a beautiful young gypsy. Dorothea discovered her husband's infidelity and accused Margot of witchcraft. Margot was condemned and burned at the stake. Heartbroken, Philip took his own life, jumping off the battlements of Diddington Manor. He was only 30 years old. Of all these biographical tidbits, Diddington Manor was the only element that was real. And of course, it had never had an occupant resembling Philip.
It took them several months before they had worked out the details of the character they were going to create.
They took their time with it.
1973,
I mean,
between 8
that can
and
be
9 months
expedited,
later,
but
that the experiments actually began.
They met on a weekly basis in a designated area of the society headquarters, which we called the Philip Room. And
can you
this
say
room was not
altar?
used for any other purpose. Had a card table with 8 metal chairs around it. And they met once a week for a period of well over 10 years.
Philip, are you there, Philip?
The group sat around in a circle with a picture of Philip in sort of a meditative state, trying to produce an apparition. And after a year, nothing happened. No phenomenon, no apparition.
okay, I got to say something.
Philip, we're looking for you.
Now, point number 2, which is important. First of all, you already created its identity, its backstory, so forth. Now, point number 2 is the first point. Number 1 is all the logic part, right? All the logic part. But there comes a time where you got to leave the logic part behind. Okay, this is where your imagination and stuff comes into play. And I'm talking about your real imagination where it's fucking real to you. You know what I'm saying? You got to get into the spirit, as they say. So you're going to see here why it took them a fucking year to get some results, because they were kind of approaching this. They were approaching this from a logical left brain point of view. You have to use your divine mind, your magical mind, okay? And you're going to see how they do it here. So just peep the technique, all right?
Philip, give us a sign, please.
At first, the members just developed a friendship with each other. They spent months together with no occurrences of a psychokinetic or telekinetic nature.
De psychokinésie ou télékinésie.
Then at some point, they changed their strategy.
De stratégie.
And suddenly, they began to see results.
Ce sont ces effets.
Like raps on the table or under it.
Raps or knocks.
And the
That's what they
table
call them.
began to shake
British
and
shit.
move. These were physical things that could be recorded.
Give us a sign, Philip. Philip, are you there, Philip?
Within a month or two,
See how fast that shit happened when they changed that up?
This imaginary
Yeah.
ghost, Philip, people started to get raps on the table. In turn, each person would say something like, "Good evening, Philip. Hello, Philip." And there would be raps underneath their fingertips. Or if a visitor came
For
in
yes, not one time.
and identified himself and said, "Hello, Philip," there'd be a rap underneath the visitor's hand. These raps were audible, were tape recorded, and had a characteristic sound envelope. And we've published the results of that auditory study.
The tapping eventually led to the table being shaken, eventually moving, and eventually actually turning right on its side. Those were really the proofs that they had in fact accomplished their experiment.
Oh, yes.
Philip's manifestations were far from what they had hoped for, but still, the group would ask a question, and Philip would answer. Surprisingly enough, the answers always corresponded to his alleged biography. As the seances progressed, Philip became more enterprising. After a few raps on the table, he would raise it off the ground and make it dance on 2 or 3 legs.
We were very careful to try and avoid hoaxes. On several occasions, we had what are called doily nights, where we would put doilies, paper doilies, under the hands of the members. And if they tried pushing the table, the doilies would simply slide across the table. So clearly the table movements were not caused by anyone pushing it. And the cameras, when we had those opportunities to videotape it, it was clear that, say, 2 people sitting on opposite sides of the table, if they both lifted their knees, might lift the table up. It was clear that that was not happening either.
Philip, are you there, Philip?
Encouraged by the astounding results, other groups around the world tried the same experiment with other imaginary characters. The results were all basically the same.
Told you. Fundamentals, baby.
They
Fundamentals.
told themselves they had found the magic formula.
La stratégie.
A mix of spontaneity combined with weekly meetings.
What if you did it every day?
Framework.
Et aussi un certain encadrement expérimental.
They thought this was the secret to being able to produce this kind of phenomenon at will.
Provoquer à volonté ce genre.
But they realized that this strategy alone was not enough.
Que cette seule stratégie.
It also took a lot of tenacity on the part of the members.
It would
Consistency.
appear that the hereafter is not the only explanation for manifestations of so-called spirits.
Which is key to everything.
It's been nearly 30 years since the original Philip experiment, and parapsychologists are still just as puzzled now as they were back then as to what was producing these manifestations.
It is interesting that the scientific community has never followed the Philip experiment, or indeed many other
Oh, you can bet
experiments
your
of
ass
similar
they
nature.
have in their own way.
Why I can't answer.
Look up MK
I myself am fully
often.
convinced
MK
that there is a
often.
level of psychic ability that is obtainable by us if we knew how to reach it. Also, let's face it, the scientific community is always a little behind the human experience. And I don't think it's any more profound than that, really.
Que ce soit du côté de l'école.
Whether you approach this from the spiritualist angle or the parapsychological angle, it's impossible to come up with scientific proof, because that proof requires that you not only be able to observe the phenomena and reproduce them at will, you must also come up with a theory to explain the phenomena and predict when they will occur. So since that was
smarty
impossible
pants.
in this case, the matter is still not settled.
So you see, we're about to come out this thing right here. Let me see here. All right. Now we're just back to me. Hey, TV got better, huh? So that is a kind of a recap, but it kind of sums up the basic formula that one needs to make a ghost. So just to recap, you need to be specific about who your ghost is, the way it looks, what it's possibly even what its capabilities are, a mythology, where it came from, its story. Everybody has a story. So should your ghost. All right. Or your custom spirit servant. All right. You heard about the tenacity aspect of it. What they're really saying is the consistency of it too. That's what they're talking about. Because when you get a custom spirit servant, you are dealing with a semi-sentient being. Okay, semi-sentient, meaning it's designed and created around your own personal frequency, but also the desire for which you even got it in the first place for. So that particular context of your life, be that finances, health, relationships, whatever have you. You see what I mean? And it starts to accumulate data in accordance to what its function is. You understand? So it does start to advance more and more and more and more. And it also gains more, for lack of a better word, mass in the astral realm. When something in the astral realm reaches a critical mass, literally, that's when it collapses here into your physical 3D realm. Okay. So we had the creating of, the actual character, making it real. When they were feeding, okay, because when they would gather together and look at this bastard and call its name, and I've seen other videos where they get into it, just like in church. They start playing music and stuff like that, and really getting into the spirit. That begins to feed it. If any of you have ever seen the movie Ghost, there's a scene where Patrick Swayze, he's already dead as a ghost. He runs into another ghost on a subway who's able to actually touch and move physical objects. And he's like, hey, how do you do that? And basically the entity goes on to explain that you got to focus, but he's also gathering and culminating energy so he can affect the physical realm. Because remember, matter is the lowest frequency of all. It's like frozen thought, right? So you got to remember the plane and density. But when you're dealing with, for example, a custom spirit servant, do also remember that 95% of magic happens in a way in which it happens and manifests and realizes its way into your 3D in a way that seems normal, as if it would have happened anyway, for the most part. Most of the time, magic is subtle, and magic loves to take the route of less friction, the easiest way. You know what I'm saying? So do be specific with your instructions to your ghost. You don't want to leave lots of room for interpretation, if you will. You don't want to tell it exactly how it's going to manifest or how the spirit is going to manifest those things. But the parameters around how it does it, as far as what it's not to do and what it is to do, needs to be clear in your own mind. And that way you can communicate that with your spirit. So if you're interested in your very own custom spirit servant, and I'm not saying that off the bat you're going to see tables flopping over and shit like that. I would be more concerned with just a nice rhythm. What I find the most attractive about custom spirit servants are they are able to grow with you, because you see your needs and your desires are going to change. They're going to fluctuate. And you need something that's going to be able to stick by you and assist you along your journey, along your path. That's why this is one of my favorite forms of magic, because it grows with you. You see what I'm saying? So what you wanted a year ago, you're probably not going to want today. Okay, especially once you get it. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in your very own custom spirit servant, the link is in the description box. Everything has been upgraded. The instructions also includes a bonus meditation MP3, which allows for quicker, more powerful, more efficient contact with your spirit servant, and also communication. You will start to be able to hear your spirit servant. I'm not saying how that's gonna happen. It could be an audible voice. It could be just more of an inner voice, or it could be synchronicities, which you just seem to instantly, and you notice that you instantly recognize this is your spirit talking to you. And you're going to start to know and pick up on its style with how it likes to communicate with you. So if you're interested in that and your very own ghostly experience, right? Link is in the description box. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, like, share, comment in here. Let me know what you thought. If you have any questions, comment. Also, before I forget, your custom spirit servant comes with, spirit support via email. So if along the way you have questions, you know what I'm saying, you can always reach out by email. We'll definitely give you your spirit support that way. Questions about maybe the first initial instructions or even afterwards, we got you covered. All right. We take you by the hand and show you how it's done. All right. This is Shango Ray. Peace.